Just going to give another minute for additional people to join us. Just a minute, because we want to respect everybody's time. And thank you to those for being here. Oh, hi, Paula. It's good to see you. All right. Okay. All right, why don't we get started? Hello and welcome to CoachSource's first Friday webinar for February. For March. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And I want to give a particularly warm welcome to our current clients as well as our not yet clients on the call. I'm Mary Dombrowski, the SVP of Client Engagement with CoachSource, leading both our current client services teams as well as creating new client partnerships. And for those of you not familiar with CoachSource, we are the largest pure play global executive coaching firm. We've been in business for 19 years and have over 1,200 coaches globally that we deploy for leadership transformation, typically at the director level and above, including C-suite and board. CoachSource hosts webinars such as this on the first Friday of every month. At CoachSource, we believe that inspiring leadership transforms organizations. Our monthly gatherings are dedicated to empowering HR business partners and leaders of talent inside organizations with insights, strategies, and expert guidance on leveraging executive coaching to drive organizational excellence. And if you have any topics that you would like to see us cover, feel free to email me at mary@coachsource.com. We'd love to hear from you. So on to today. Over the last few years, diversity, equity, and inclusion have become increasingly polarizing topics, sparking debate across corporate boardrooms, political arenas, and social discourse. What was once widely accepted as a progressive and necessary strategy for workplace innovation and leadership development has in some cases become a point of contention. Leaders today face the challenge of maintaining focus on building strong leadership pipelines that leverage the power of diverse talent while navigating an environment where even the language used to describe these efforts can create resistance. Yet despite the shifting discourse, the business case remains clear. Research consistently shows that organizations with diverse leadership teams experience higher revenue growth, increased innovation, and better decision-making. The most successful companies don't treat diversity as a standalone initiative. They embed it as a core component of leadership and business strategy, driving long-term organizational performance. A recent survey of C-suite leaders by Littler found that only 8% are seriously considering changing their DEI programs as a result of the executive orders issued by the new administration, with 47% saying commitments will either remain the same or grow in 2020. Today's discussion is not about debating terminology, it's about results. The focus is on how organizations can move beyond buzzwords and embed diversity as a strategic imperative for leadership development and business success. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by Zia Best, one of our client service directors and DEI lead at CoachSource, and James Rogers, one of our amazing CoachSource qualified coaches, as well as the #1 thought leader in the field of diversity management. Known as the diversity coach, James has practiced diversity management as an enterprise performance discipline for over 35 years. So as I kick off the conversation to Zia and James, I'm going to start with the question of how organizations can move from checking the box on diversity and leadership pipelines to strategically implementing it as a competitive advantage for growth.
You can go, Zia.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I think that in order to move from checking the box on diversity and leadership pipelines to really leveraging it as a competitive advantage, organizations have to shift from performative efforts, right, to a strategic action. It has to move in a direction that's focused on things like tying it to the business strategy, making sure that there's accountability involved at every single level, and really investment in advancement, not just hiring. And the culture really does matter.
So, Mary, I told you I love this question because just the very nature of the question says that we recognize and realize that diversity can be a strategy and a competitive tool. And that's the beginning of the process, is to realize that the possibility exists. Now, as far as I'm concerned, over the last several years, since 2020, I think the last time Zia, you and I did a session like this on a webinar, um, CEOs, and I've worked with over 360 different C-suite teams. CEOs were frantically trying to install something that was being called DEI. Now they're frantically trying to dismantle that and figure out what do we do with this need, this competitive need, but maybe not hold on to the language that we have. So I have a really simple process that I share with people about how to mentally process things like this. If number one, define your terms. The biggest problem we have right now is people use the word diversity and we have 200 different meanings. So let's define our terms. Second, keep it simple. The biggest problem we have is the over complexity of the issue. And complexity causes people to stagnate. They will not move if they don't understand clearly what we're trying to accomplish. And the third element of that is define the terms, keep it simple, and the last piece of it is don't be stupid. And stupidity has to do with forgetting what we were trying to do in the first place. So your question suggests we recognize that we do diversity as a competitive advantage. It's good for business. It is not about social or political posturing. It is about business acumen. It is about business success. So more than anything, what leaders can do to move beyond, like Zia said, the performative stuff that we've been doing, get serious about it. And that requires leaders to educate themselves on what the it is. You can't get good at it if you don't know what it is.
Mm. I love it when you say things like that, James, because it just reminds me of some of
Yeah.
the foundational things, right? When you think about it, define your terms, keep it simple, don't be stupid by forgetting what we were trying to do in the first place. That feels like a really good place to like ground us in a collective understanding. Can you talk
Yeah.
a little bit about where were we trying to do originally? What's the
Yeah.
goal of
And
this thing?
you're hitting on a key point. I call it a historical perspective. People drop into this conversation. This conversation has been going on for 40 years. People drop into this conversation freshly new to it and declare themselves an expert on something that they have no grounding in. So let me just give you a quick uh, historical perspective. The diversity movement started in response to a new reality. Uh, the Hudson Institute did a study for the Department of Labor that says, oh my God, within the next 20 years, the makeup of our workplace is going to be drastically different. We're going to have a lot of non traditional workers moving in. Our managers and our leaders are not used to this. We have got to respond to this by developing new skills, new attitudes, new processes so that we can get the best out of this new workforce. So one thing as a management expert over my career as a consultant, I realized that anytime you change the mix of a workplace team, you change the dynamics of that team. And so leaders and managers have to develop new skills so that you can utilize the new mix of employees that you have. That's what diversity was about, responding to a new fact. Now, diversity itself, going back to definition, does not mean black, female, gay, disabled. It means the collective mix. Whoever shows up on your team is the diversity of the team. And as long as we think about that it is for, by, and to the benefit of everybody, then we get benefit of it. And Zia, to your point, in the early years, we actually got the competitive advantage that we were looking for. I can give you uh,
Yeah.
200 examples of organizations that utilize this to, like Procter and Gamble, to create seven new billion-dollar products, like Apple, to create this machine that I'm working on right now. The first model of this was a disaster because they didn't take into account the diversity of the people who would be using it. And once they did that, they created a great product. Frito-Lay coming up with different flavors for different ethnic audiences. There's just a million examples of how when you use it and do it right, you can get competitive advantage, you get benefit from it, everybody wins.
Yeah, that is spot on. I love the examples and I love, again, the simplicity of the framing and reminding ourselves that if we get back to the core intention of this work, then we can also have success leveraging this as a competitive advantage for everyone. What are you seeing in terms of organizations being able to successfully reframe this conversation?
Well, the smart ones are not having a lot of difficulty. The only problem that most leaders in organizations have is overcoming uh, the hijacking of the conversation. When the conversation is left about business to business people, we have a decent conversation. When politics and sociology get mixed in with it, those people are really good at hijacking a conversation, and they create a big buzz and to what we were talking about earlier, Mary, what I call meme thinking. In other words,
Mhm.
someone puts an idea out in the atmosphere and everybody just latches onto it. They don't ask questions, they don't question it, they don't examine it, they don't say, is that true? They just latch onto it. And some people are really good at doing that. And unfortunately, those people who had political and social agendas started using the language of diversity. Remember, diversity management was began as a business discipline, but somebody lopped onto it because the large companies that latched onto it, guess what they had? A lot of money. And people who wanted access to that money for whatever their issue was latched onto the language. And before you know it, you use the word diversity and no one knows what you're talking about. So that's kind of how we lost the momentum. And of course, we just didn't, leaders of organizations didn't exercise enough leadership to say, no, this is what diversity means. This is how we use it. This is how we have gotten better outcomes as a result of it. They just allowed the conversation to be hijacked. They allowed the language to be co opted. And before you know it, there's this whole movement out in society that bled inside companies that now have demonized an idea that is really so simple, so elegant, so logical, so practical, and yet we're going to lose the benefit of it just because we were not diligent enough to do it the way that was intended to be done.
I feel like that's so powerful reframing of something that seems so very complicated, right? That has been a struggle to really wrap your head around and then also operationalize and connect it to the purpose, right? Connect it to the business outcomes, to business growth, to being able to drive innovation. It makes me wonder because there's so many misperceptions out there about what this actually is. What are some of the biggest ones that you think that we can start to clear away for people so that they can understand what that purpose is? And I'm thinking about that framing that you gave me when we talked recently about what it really is all about in terms of opportunity. Can you help us think about what that looks like?
Absolutely. And one of the things that I'm doing is taking this old technology and reframing it to where we are today. So remember that the reason for the diversity management, I call it diversity management, the original name was managing diversity. Dr. Roosevelt Thomas was the scholar, the thought leader that came up with the idea in response to the Hudson study. He basically says, okay, a new reality is coming. You're not ready for it. We're going to help equip you to take advantage of this so that you get the best from all of your team members and all of your teams all the time. That was the original intent. So I just did a presentation for the Department of Defense and Department of Homeland Security. And of course, even before the new administration came in, they had a mandate that says we could not use DEI language in any of our HR efforts. And I told them, so what? What's your problem? You're not going to change the idea that your original goal is to get world-class results with whatever mix you have on your teams. If you keep that in mind, it doesn't matter what you call it. What it matters is, are you going to manage it in such a way that you get world-class results? That is the possibility. That is the opportunity. And one of the things that's happened to us now, we're at this inflection point, Zia. The last
Hmm.
time we started this, it was an inflection point. Oh my God, things are about to change. Where we're at an inflection point now where we're being forced to relinquish the language. But as I think you said so eloquently, we don't have to relinquish the intention. Our intent is to manage our enterprises in such a way that we get world-class results. The way to do that is to get comfortable with the fact that every archetype of humankind is going to show up on our team. That means every race, every gender, every sexual orientation, every level of ability, every mental capacity, every nationality, every whatever is going to show up on our teams. We have to be equipped and prepared so that we can get the best out of that team no matter what the mix is, which is now why I'm elevating this language. We give up diversity. You all won that. Y'all won that battle. We're not going to give up on the intent. So right now I'm focusing on managing the mix. If we continue just manage the mix so that we can continue to get world-class results, we will get the outcomes that we're looking for. It will be simple, and our leaders will have something to hang their hat on, which comes back to, why CoachSource is so important, because leaders have to make this transition. It is a transition for them to start thinking about this in what Dr. Thomas used to call a more sophisticated way. There's a base way of thinking about this, just, race, gender, and all of that other stuff. That's not productive. Those are artificial barriers. A more sophisticated way is to say humans are human, and humans come with all kind of differences. No human can be defined by any single dimension of diversity. All of us are complex. Now, the skill set is, as a manager and a leader, can I take whatever mix shows up? And I chose them because I knew that they had potential to help my enterprise to be successful. Whatever that mix shows up, I can congeal them into a high performing team and get world class results with whatever that mix is. So managing that mix is really what this whole process is all about.
Mm. That is so powerful. I see it popped up in the chat too, that someone called out that they really like that framing. And that's why I love having these conversations with you, because it takes something that feels very theoretical and very hard to grasp and simplifies it in a way that not only can you digest it, it's easier for you to speak with other people and have them digest it too. Now that we're starting to reframe this conversation, where do you see the role of coaching and leadership development initiatives that are aimed at this purpose? How do you see us providing value in this space?
I just had, that I'm a close friend of the founder of executive coaching, Marshall Goldsmith, and I just spent a weekend with him, and he and I were talking about this whole idea of how coaching is so very necessary in these times. When people are going through transition, coaching has to be there to ask them the right questions, but also to provide advice and counsel to them about how they reframe their thinking, because this is not a normal case. When we have an inflection point, there's an opportunity for us to change. There's an opportunity for us to do things better. So this is a golden opportunity for us to get out of some old ways and move into new ways. That's where coaching is necessary. Our coaches have to bring to the leaders that are running our enterprises this new mindset. We have to ask them deeper questions. We have to ask them pointedly about the mix of your team. What are your challenges? If this person is from Afghanistan and you're not used to working with Afghans, what are you going to do in order to make that person a vital member of your team and to make the rest of your team meld them into so that you have a seamless functioning team? And if you have this person from some other part of the world, or have this person who is of a different persuasion than you, someone who's even politically, very dogmatically, politically not in the same frame that you are, how do you manage that? And those are the questions that we have to begin asking. And as you know, and as I know as a long-term high-end executive coach, those are the kind of things that our clients are asking us about. What do I do? I just had this new member of the team, and boy, I've never managed anyone like that. What do I do? And we have to give them the simple human answer to that. And we have to allow them to question themselves in how they're managing the team. Like I said earlier, anytime a new type of person comes on your team, the dynamics of the team changes. And that's the time when you really need some help to help you to navigate whatever that change may be.
Hmm. Yeah. It's really fascinating to me, because I know where you sit when you work with lots of leaders and clients. What are the obstacles that people are telling you that they're facing versus what you really see them as? You know, how are they articulating the challenges? And then how are you standing up and helping them to think about
Yeah,
really what they're asking?
yeah. So a lot of them are reacting and reacting, okay, the president says we can't use this language. Does that mean we can't do this, that, or the other? So they are scurrying around trying to figure out how to respond to this new social environment, this new political environment. And what I'm advising them, as I've always told my clients, two of my clients taught me this, allow your HR and legal people to give you their advice, but don't let them run your business. So what I think I shared with you one of my heroes in business who Jamie Dimon said, someone asked him, "What are y'all going to do about diversity?" He says, "First of all, this is a stupid debate. We are not going to change the way that we manage our people in this enterprise." And that's what diverse DEI, whatever we call it, that was what it was about. How do we honor, respect, encourage, support, and develop our people? We're not going to change that. So whatever argument you all want to have out there in the political sphere, that's not going to affect us. So my more enlightened leaders are taking that posture. But the one thing that I remind them of, if they're going to maintain that posture, they got to go back and re-educate themselves on what the it is. See, one of the things that has happened is leaders relinquished that responsibility. And I'm gonna be
The
flat out
defining.
honest with you. Well, I'm gonna be flat out honest with you. Uh, when the word DEI or whatever the latest term came up, many leaders just said, okay, get me a brown skinned person or a gay person or someone else and tell them to handle it and keep it off my plate. They didn't bother to educate themselves on what the possibilities were, what the process were, what the outcomes could be. And so they don't know what they're missing. So one of the things that I'm reminding them of is your job to manage the enterprise. It is your job to lead. You can't abrogate your leadership to someone simply because you think it matches the expectations of the larger public. You have to take responsibility of it. I love the fact that several years ago, a couple of CEOs came on and said, everybody's appointing a chief diversity officer. This is a CEO. He says, I am the chief diversity officer. And I thought that would set the right tone. If you Diversity should not be something separate from the way you run your business. So if you're responsible for running the business, you are the chief diversity officer as well as the chief executive officer, as well as the leader of the chief marketing officer, and so forth and so on. So CEOs have to step up and take their rightful role and stop hiding behind uh, social constructs that really don't serve their outcomes well.
Mm. That is so powerful. And I just want to acknowledge that, you know, so many organizations and people enter this space with the right intention, right? I think what you outlined is how that can often go in a direction that you're not hoping it can without that education and without that grounding of what the it is and how. I read a quote not long ago that said that diversity is not about division, it's about addition.
Yeah,
Right. And that's something that you and I have discussed many times, that when we develop and support diverse leaders, the goal isn't to take something away from
yeah,
others. It's about
yeah,
expanding that table, right? And
yeah,
providing an opportunity, strengthening the team, and ensuring that every person has an opportunity to reach and lead at their absolute highest potential. I think it was something that you said to me that still stuck about the packaging, right? How my
yeah.
packaging does not put me on a path where I benefit from my external packaging, but I'm also not penalized because
Right.
of it, right? That the
Yeah.
collective, we all have an opportunity to sit and share and to grow together. And so I'd love to take a little detour into, you know, how can we make sure that we're framing this in a way that it stays about addition and not subtraction?
Again, it requires leadership. So one of the things that I'm telling leaders right now is because of the frenzy. There's so much frenzy around. There's a lot of language going on. Everybody's talking. Take a breath and think. For me, thinking means go beyond feeling. So when I sit down, and I have a great track record of this, when I sit down with a leader and just calmly explain to them, this is what it's really about. This is what we intended to do when we started. Here are the early results we got. Here's how we got off track. If you want to be a leader, get it back on track. Just focus on these simple conceptions. One of the things that the reason I use the word management is as a student of management, my PhD is in management, is that I remember Peter Drucker said, finally, after much study, management is a discipline. A discipline, that means there's a way to do it. I started my consulting career in total quality management. There is a way to do it. You're not confused about how to get quality in your organization. The successor to that was Six Sigma. I did lean manufacturing. I am I'm an engineering geek, you know that. So those things made sense to me. Management is a discipline. Total quality management is a discipline. But guess what? Diversity management is a discipline also. So for me, it's summarizing it down to its essentials. What is the intention? What's the purpose? What is the process? And what is the outcome? If we can't answer those questions, we are just blowing smoke. This is business. This discipline was designed for business to be good for business. That's why we use language that makes sense to business people. When we talk to CEOs about this, this is the language they understand. There's a process, there's an intention, there's a purpose, there's a desired outcome. That's my language. I know what that looks like. If I can answer those questions, I know I'm heading towards something. Without answering those questions, we're just talking and using your word. We're just going through a performative process to look good rather than to be good. Diversity management was designed to help you be good. Ooh, that was good. I think I ought to write that down.
That was not just good. That was great. And you know that it was. You felt it when it left your lips and you said, oh, yes.
Yeah, somebody ought to write that one down. That's good.
Listen, I might have to
We're
short
recording.
clip this. Yeah, and make that one go viral because it was like 6 explanation points at the end of a very, very powerful oration, and a summary. And it's about doing right. So we know, right, that when companies do diversity management right, they can unlock a wide range of powerful business, cultural benefits that go way beyond just representation. What's possible when they do it right?
Well, what we know, and the beautiful thing about it is we're not guessing on this. We could guess, well, this would be nice if we had more diversity on the team. But no, we've done many, many studies. Scholars have been studying this stuff for years. And we know for a fact that decision making, prediction, innovation, problem solving, all are immensely enhanced by having more diverse perspectives on your team. That's just a fact. So you don't do this stuff for benevolence. You're not, trying to help some disadvantaged group. You're trying to help your business. And you recognize that talent comes in all kind of packages. You can never tell where the person who has that breakthrough idea for your business, you can never tell where they're going to come from, what they look like, who their mama and them is, or any of that stuff. You have to be willing to say, if you're talented, come in. I'm going to take it upon myself to manage you and the rest of the team in such a way that we all thrive. I'm going to let that management develop up to the point where the firm gets higher performance. That is my job. When I buy stock, I don't buy stock for the CEO to be a social engineer. I buy it to look. I want better outcomes in the business. I want profit. I want the intent of the business. I want customers to be served. That's what they're there for. And when they start taking on these larger things and they're not really gifted in those areas, that's when it goes awry. So the article that I wrote, and you referenced it already, for Leader to Leader magazine, basically asked this question: who should be leading a diversity effort? Not who you think. And the reason I did that is because we fell into the trap of believing diversity means black, female, gay, etc. Diversity means the collective mix. Diversity means the collective mix. And if we learn nothing else out of this turmoil we're going through, is that the collective mix is where the value is. People with different perspectives, different packaging, different life experiences, bring value to every decision that you're trying to make. The key, of course, is not only to get them into your business, but then to learn to let their voice be heard.
Hmm.
You know as well as I do, it's no good to have, wow, what a good looking, diverse group we got. Bob, tell me what you think. The rest of you all be quiet. That just that is not a formula for success. When you have diversity on your team, you have to be skilled in making sure those voices are heard. And that mix of perspectives gives you better outcomes. That's why in the early days we got so much success because we were following these simple principles, these simple, common sense, logical, practical principles. And then the conversation got hijacked and the language got co-opted, and before you know it, here we are.
Oh, I love that. The headlines I just grabbed from you is you get stronger business performance, innovation, better attraction of the talent, better ability to retain and engage that talent,
Yeah.
effective leadership skills, the ones that you need, decision making, strategic thinking, all of those things. And then you tied it back to you get to actually enhance your customer and your market reach, right? Because the more
Yep.
you understand those people, like you gave those examples where the chip company made different flavors, you understand your customers, you can provide
Mm-hmm.
what they need now, right?
Yeah.
And that really does build your credibility and your trust with those audiences that you're trying to grow, and that all sets you up for a more resilient, future ready organization, right? That
Yeah.
allows you to be able to push forward and push past the noise that we're hearing right
Absolutely.
now.
That was a beautiful phrase. Push past the noise because the noise is the problem that we're having now. It's such a noisy atmosphere out there. People screaming at each other and talking about diversity management as though it was the greatest thing since sliced bread and the bane of humankind. Just on opposite ends. I'll tell you a quick example of how noise shows up. Our current president went into when he was campaigning went into a group that was kind of like not his audience, the National Association of Black Journalists, and the first thing that they asked him is, "Mr. President, do you think that your opponent is a DEI hire?" And he asked a great question. I got to give him credit for this. He says, "Well, before I answer that, tell me what is DEI?" Now, since I've got 40 years of experience, I knew by their hesitation they didn't know, and I knew by his hesitation he didn't know. So that just pointed up to me that we got two sides arguing vehemently about something that neither one of them knows what it is. That's why Jamie said this is a stupid debate because nobody knows what they're debating about. It has no substance. It is just a meme adoption out in the marketplace. And unfortunately, it's bled itself inside of our companies so that they have adopted that mean thinking and they're losing the value of good diversity management, which I now call managing the mix, so that they continue to get world class results. Like you said earlier, we got to block out the noise. We got to get back to the fundamentals. We got to start running our enterprises based on the reality or the facts. Jim Collins says, always run your businesses based the facts. The facts are whether you like it or not, you're going to have an increasingly diverse population of employees and customers. That's just a fact. The question is, are you going to be able to manage that? Are you going to be able to manage that and continue to sell in all markets and continue to manage your team so that they get world class results? Simple proposition.
Mm. Very simple. I'm wondering, because you have so much experience, 40 years doing this, managing the mix, and you have a really great way of connecting us to the core purpose and not allowing it to be diluted by that noise and by all the rancor around it. And so my question is, if you had to give advice, right? If we think about an organization and we think about the leaders, the folks that are in the mix coming to the table, what would you say to them? What would you say to those middle managers that are figuring out how to leverage and partner with them effectively? And what do you say
Yeah.
to the top of the house?
Yeah. So I started down that path. First of all, take a breath and think. And there's some philosophy around the word think. Most of you all know that the motto of IBM is think. That's 120 years old. I often wonder, what does he mean by that? We're human. Of course we think. Well, I also read something by Mark Twain who says, we all do no end to feeling and we mistake it for thinking. So part of what I say in this think is move beyond your emotions, move beyond your feelings, move beyond your preferences, move beyond your political leanings or whatever is driving the way that you operate, and stop and think. If you stop and think about it, this is intended to make business better. How do I make that happen? By managing my teams and my enterprise, recognizing that diversity, increasing diversity is just a fact of life. Now, the way I position that is everybody knows volatility in the financial markets is one of the realities that business people have to take into account. So, if I'm the CEO, I don't stress over the fact that the interest rate is 7%. I just put that down on the paper. When I'm doing my calculations, interest rate is 7%. I'm not pulling my hair out about it. I'm not discussing it ad nauseum. That's a fact of life. And what I'm trying to get people to understand is increasing diversity is a fact of life. You don't have to agonize over and debate it forever. That's just a fact. Now, what you do have to do is just like you manage your 7% interest rate, you have to manage the diversity of your teams in such a way that you continue to get the outcomes that you're looking for. The good news is it's possible. In my first book, I presented the opportunity to get 100% from 100% of your people 100% of the time. That was a call for managers to say, regardless of who shows up on my team, no matter how they're packaged, can I get can I do a better job of getting them to give me their best perspectives, their best skill set, their best talent, so that I can continue to get the best results from those teams. That was the challenge. And I think that still remains the challenge if we can keep it to the simple, not get distracted by all of the noise around the divisive language. And that is really what it's all about. People are intending to divide us around something that really is intended to benefit all of us. And if we can just maintain our posture, and this is where leadership comes in, and this is where coaching comes in, we have to remind people constantly. Oh, you just heard this the other day. You have to be diligent. Ignore that. You know what you're about. You know you're about managing the team, managing the corporation. Do your job and don't get distracted by that noise. So it begin, take a breath and think. Get clear about the outcomes. In other words, we're doing it. Why are we doing it? That's one of the questions I always ask. I used to do these sessions, executive education session, and there was always some junior executive when we were talking about diversity would raise his hand and ask this profound question. What problem are we trying to solve? I mean, what are we doing this for? And they many times thought that I would push back on that. I said, great, that's just a question we ought to be asking. Why are we doing this? So get clear about the intention and the outcomes that you're looking for. And finally, preserve the intent. Lose the language. Who cares what we call it? I have one of my friends, Dr. Shelton Good, reminds me of this idea that I raised a long time ago. I call it language roulette. We started this out managing diversity. I shifted the language to diversity management. Since then, it has been diversity and inclusion, inclusion, diversity and equity, diversity, equity and inclusion, DEIB, DEIAB, it's all over the place, language roulette. Because every time someone introduced a new acronym, I would ask them, so what's different about that than DEI? They never have an answer, of course. Somehow we believe that if we change the language, somehow we get better outcomes. Not been my experience that there's anywhere close to truth. So what we need to do is get clear on the concepts, get clear on the principles, get clear on the desired outcomes. That's when we make progress. Other than that, we're just batting words around.
Yeah. I love that. I feel like I just picked up so many nuggets that you literally just dropped right into my lap. I know the rest of the audience heard it too. Language roulette is now in my notebook. I've got a perfect definition for that. It was interesting when you said it because I think back to one of my first jobs, right? And when I was really just starting out, and DEI has been a part of my career for 18 years. However, it was called something different then, right? So it was just that reminder. But
Yep.
what I focused on then is still what I'm focused on now. And so I'd love to, as we get ready to turn this over to Mary, is what's the last thing, the most important thing, the thing that you want to continue to go around? What should we all take away from this conversation, from being regrounded in the simplicity of the intention and the why?
The principles of diversity management, what I'm calling now managing the mix, they work. And so we have an opportunity to exercise those principles and those intentions now again, because the makeup of the workplace is, as we speak, changing drastically again. The first time it was about the entire archetypes of humankind. So we had to get ready for that mix, that diversity mix. This time it is humans plus robots, AI agents, IoT, machines. I asked a question in my executive academy recently: can you imagine an AI agent as a coworker? What you're hearing now is that is the new reality. So not only we're going to have non-traditional human workers on our teams, we're also going to have non-human, non-sentient beings as coworkers. Guess what? The same principles we developed in the first round of this work are the same ones that we need now. So this is an opportunity to revisit the principles of diversity management and now to use them in such a way that we get world-class results from the new mix in the workplace, which is humans plus machines. So I would tell people, go back, check the history out, see what's possible, and then let's proceed down a path that continues to get world-class results, regardless of whatever the mix is on our teams. Let's get the best from everybody.
That is absolutely wonderful. I know that that's going to be my key takeaway, the power of creating a space and opportunity for everyone to thrive in the organization, to
Absolutely.
be their best self, to bring it, and to continue to drive those business results together. That's what makes it powerful. I really appreciate you stepping in to have this conversation with me in front of this audience. I think that it's necessary, and I'm so glad that I got to talk openly with someone who has really been on the ground with this work, this intention of this work for a very, very long time. So thank you.
Thank you, Zia.
Oh gosh, thank you both. What a great conversation. I have a question I want to ask, but I want to open the floor for questions and remind our clients and not yet clients that CoachSource is here as a thought leadership partner. And if you want to talk further about how executive coaching can support creating diversity inside your organization, you are welcome to reach out to me or your CoachSource client service director. And just a reminder that our next First Friday will be Friday, April 4th. At 11 a.m. And a recording of this session will be posted on our website at coachsource.com. And it will also be sent out to you in an email afterward. So if you have a question, raise your hand, post it in chat, and I will direct it to Zia and to James. But this is a question that I'm curious about. James, what are the biggest challenges or obstacles that organizations face as they're trying to focus on this mix, right? On managing the mix. Where do they get it wrong, or where do they hit obstacles or challenges?
So this is a pet peeve of mine, Mary. We have for the last 40, 45, it's a little bit longer than that, since the mid 70s, been so focused on top level leadership that we forgot that still matters. Management still matters. So, we don't call this diversity leadership. Leaderships empower the organization to practice this stuff, but it's practiced at the frontline management level. So one of the things that they get wrong is trying to make, let's say, Apple a more diverse work environment. You're not going to do that. You're going to make the team that developed this this machine that I'm working on right now. You're going to make that team more diverse, and you're going to get the benefit of that at the team level. And that team level moves up to better divisions, and better divisions move up to better departments, and better departments create better firms. So you have to start at the area where the uh, the brilliance of individuals working together as a team. That's where you get the value. That's where value is created in every organization on the front line. And so, if I would suggest to anything, here's a statistic that should be troubling to all of us: 70% of a team's effectiveness is due to the manager. 70%.
Hmm.
And 80% of people who hold the title of manager, in my words, suck at the role. So, so we have a lot of room. We got a lot of room to improve and be better by, first of all, focusing on creating better managers and allowing those managers to learn to manage the mix as well as best as they can, so that the enterprise eventually gets advantage of that. It's
Okay,
just
that's
that
great.
simple for me. I apologize.
So it's starting at the
We don't,
lower
sometimes
levels
we don't
and
like
moving it.
simple, but
Okay, no, that's
yeah.
great. That's great. And so there's a question in chat. I see a hand raised, which I'll get to in a moment. Are you seeing a shift and an uptake of the more fundamental perspective of managing diversity?
It's gradually, but it's only because of programs like this where we're starting to re-educate people. And that's what I told someone the other day, we got to uneducate you first. We got to get you to unlearn all of the mess that you've learned over the last 10 years. And then we got to re-educate you on what's possible. And so that's where we're in the process now of getting people to unlearn all the baggage that they've accumulated over the last 10 years, so that they're now in a position with programs like this to, that just makes good common sense.
Mm-hmm.
Why is my head so full of all of this other noise? And if we can get people to come to that realization, and especially leaders, and this is why you all's work is so important. If we can get leaders to first of all say, yes, I get it, and I get it, understand it so well with such clarity that I can now lead others to that understanding. That's the work that we're up to.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. Alessandra Curte has her hand raised. So let me see if I can allow the mic. Alessandra, you should be unmuted. Oh, I didn't think I did it. Wait a second. Let me try it again.
Yeah.
Jason, can you help with that?
Let
Because
me.
clearly
Oh,
I
she's
have
good.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great.
Yes.
Yes, because in fact you need to allow me. Okay, no, thanks for this call, and apologize. I couldn't join earlier, so I might have missed a piece of the discussion. But I think it was interesting what you said, because I truly believe that diversity is really, really important to get the right information, making the right decision, getting different perspective. But the thing is, as as we said, in the reality is not always like that, in the sense that as we said, also in like big company, there is this trend in talking about diversity, in talking about being open-minded and so on. But then what I have seen so a few times in my career is that at the end, for example, also for like people tend to work with people they have the same mind. So usually they try to, people normally feel more comfortable to be, especially high level manager, they feel more comfortable to be surrounded by people that are like-minded, which this for me is a really pity, because it doesn't allow this diversity to go and, let's say, flourish also at higher level. So my question for you will be, how would you try to act to influence basically higher level leadership, to convince them or influence them to show the benefit of this diversity? How would you do that? Because the thing is, we might know this is very important, but then when you are from a lower level position, it's really difficult to influence. So would you have any advice on how to do that?
Let me start there, and then I really would invite you to pipe in on this. Number one, you're not going to talk them into seeing it. If people are used to doing things a certain way, surrounding themselves with people just like them, who think just like them, you're not going to talk them out of that. What you can do is demonstrate a better way of doing it. So what I tell people, especially on the front line, which is why I emphasize front line so much, if you have a team, make that team as diverse as possible, manage it well, and then show others, you see what we got? We call it a demonstration project. We had a team of like people once. I changed that team to one where a broad range of perspectives. We're working on the same things, but we got a 37% better outcome with this diverse team than we did with that old team. Just thought you'd want to know. That's how you convince senior level people is with evidence, not with rhetoric.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's not only that you win with a diverse team, you win big and you shine brightly because of it, right? That's what moves the needle. People seeing that way, that wasn't the way that I was thinking about it. And look where I am now. But look where
Yeah.
they are. Look how they're being celebrated and recognized because of what they're able to do in the business now. And that seeing that opens people's eyes and moves them far better than any conversation ever would.
Yep.
Great.
Thank you
Okay,
much.
fabulous. Thanks, Alessandra. We have another question in chat from Ron. Two-part question. Given the political climate, how can organizations ensure everyone is exposed to opportunities? And the second part is, if opportunities become limited due to political agendas, how does this impact this work, especially if the voices are so loud with mean thinking?
I
Yeah,
went first last time. You get to go
I know.
this time.
I figured you were going to throw that back on me, and I was ready. See, so given the political climate, I think that organizations just need to not be afraid to do what they know is right. Right? That if you know that this round table is made better by conversations and hearing the voices and the contributions of people who have different lived experiences, different professional experiences, that they have some extra value, you continue to listen to those things and you do exactly what we said earlier. You drown out that noise. I know it's not going to be easy, but don't back down for what it is that you know is right. We don't have to call it the thing that people don't want us to call it. It doesn't matter. What do we do with it? So continue on that same road of showing and proving the value of having diverse teams and what you're able to progress and accelerate because of that creative, fresh perspective that everyone's bringing to bounce off of one another. Some of the best ideas don't happen because one person had them. It happened because one person mentioned something, someone else made it better, someone else made it better, and someone else made it awesome. And now we have something fantastic. So making sure that you stand true to what it is that you should be doing, not what we should be calling it.
Beautiful. Well said. I want to second and underline everything Zia just said and point out by way of example. Diverse perspectives work. Again, research shows that this is not debatable. So the idea is, am I willing to get caught up in noise, jargon, meme adoption, or do I really want to preserve the health and viability of my enterprise? That's the level of thinking that I'm encouraging people to talk about this. You remember the old program, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? You got three options. When you want to answer a question, you got three options. You got a 50-50, ask a friend, or ask the audience. Guess which of those is the most successful way to get the right answer? Ask the audience. A broad perspective of opinions, and whenever they come together, nearly 98.7% of the time they get the right answer. Now, in my research, I have shown that the world's best expert can't match that. The world's best expert compared to a broadly diverse team of people, that broadly diverse team of people will always outperform the world's best expert. So again, the evidence is there. And that's why I say think, don't feel your way to the answer. Think your way to the answer and say the logic, the practical application, that tells me this is the right thing to do. And I'm going to do it for the right reason, not because of some social upheaval or because people are pressing me to do it. I'm going to do it because it's good for business.
Well, amen to that.
Yeah. I just saw
So
something in the chat a second ago, Mary, that made me say someone called out the language, right? That the language
yes,
that you're providing through this session is
right.
really, really helpful. That you've coined about 5 phrases today, which is amazing. And I think that that's how we continue this, continuing to have these conversations. And instead of paying it forward, which people like to say, you grow it forward, grow our
Yeah.
ability to expand the
Mhm.
language in this way, each person
Mhm.
with each person.
Yep.
While focusing on the intentions and outcomes, right? And knowing that it's good for business is, getting above the rhetoric, getting beyond the rhetoric, and to what is it we're trying to do here. What a fabulous conversation this was today. James, thank you so much for your participation. Zia, thank you so much for yours. And thank you to everybody on this call. I don't see any more questions, and we're almost at top of the hour. So we really appreciate you all showing up today and look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you.
Thank
Fabulous.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
James. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, everyone
Thank
who
you,
is
Zia.
here. Fabulous.
Zia, you were brilliant as usual. I'm just so
No,
proud
that's
of you.
you. I,
You were
I
both
bounce off of
brilliant.
you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Mary,
We've got to take this on the road one day, Jim.
hey, that's an idea that I could buy into.